Good morning and welcome to the Village Chapel on what I hope will be an annual event when we come together and talk about those things that need to be decided upon and handled before we go to meet our Savior. And before Buck takes over, let us pray together. Gracious Lord, who loves us beyond our understanding, as we prepare our earthly concerns for the sake of those who survive us, prepare our hearts to receive the blessings of everlasting life, united with you, who lives and reigns with God the Father and God the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very, very much for being here today. We've got I think a program that will be of interest to you. And also, incidentally, I don't know whether you've seen this, but we do have lots of materials over there that our speakers have been kind enough to provide. So I hope you'll take advantage of those. And we do have the speakers that you'll see here on your list, Tanya Wright, Jim Torek, Robin Patterson, I said that, Craig, that's a mistake, Mike St. John Jacobs, and Jim Wilford, who is not here yet, but he'll be here shortly, and he'll be speaking toward the end of our presentation today. I'll tell you right off the bat that Mike Gorenflow, my associate at Sandhills Law Group, unfortunately was taken ill over the night and was not able to be here today. So I'm concerned for his health, but I'm hoping that things get better for him. He was going to speak on wills and related documents such as estates, trusts, those sorts of things. He has left over there on the table for us a couple of brochures that are promulgated by the North Carolina Bar Association, one of which is on living wills and healthcare powers of attorney, very important. The other of which is a brochure entitled Protecting Your Assets, Wills, Trusts, Powers of Attorney. Those are very, very helpful. The North Carolina Bar Association worked very hard on those to provide a comprehensive but concise presentation. And incidentally, Mike felt so bad about not being able to be here today. His card is with each of those brochures, and he has offered everyone in this room who is here today a free consultation in our Pinehurst office. So if he is glad to review your existing documents at no cost to you, our Pinehurst office is at 100 Market Square, and just in case you're familiar with it or vaguely familiar with it, we're the office on Market Square. There's the Teignard restaurant on our right-hand side. The Potpourri gift shop is on our left-hand side. So that should give you a little bit of an idea of where we're located. We're directly behind the old BB&T building in the Village area. Again, Mike is glad to meet you there. A couple of things I'll tell you that Mike would have said had he been here today. Two things. Number one, there's no such thing as a simple will. I get approached all the time by people who say to me, well, it really shouldn't be too complicated, you know, it's just my husband and me, and we've got a couple of kids, and when we die, the kids split it. And yeah, that sounds pretty simple in a 30-second conversation, but there's invariably more to it than that. So again, I would encourage you to speak with Mike when you have an opportunity. The other thing that he would say to you is that not all wills are alike. I know that many of you have relocated to North Carolina from other states. I would urge you to have your wills reviewed by North Carolina attorneys such as Mike, for example, which he's offered to do. Not all probating requirements are the same from state to state, and I have seen, for example, situations where a will that was perfectly valid in the state in which people were formerly domiciled is not effective in North Carolina. The resultant effect of that would be that in North Carolina you would be presumed to have died without a will. So again, I think it's very important for you to have your estate documents reviewed by a North Carolina attorney if you have not yet done so upon your move here. And of course, if you have had your North Carolina documents reviewed, but you haven't done so in several years, similarly, I would also encourage you to have those updated because circumstances change, and it could be, for example, that you might have had an executor in your will who's no longer surviving or who is no longer capable of managing the estate administration or assisting in it, I should say. So again, keep all that in mind very carefully for me. I think it'll be helpful to you. Well, Mike could have gone for 15 minutes about that. That's everything I know. That was about, 90 seconds. So I'll leave it at that. Having said that, Tanya Wright, whose presentation, quite honestly, and to an extent, would dovetail with Mike's, because although Mike's is the real legal drafting of the documents, Tanya's is more the specifics of some of the terms and conditions and the things to consider when drafting those documents. So I'll turn it to her at this point. And one just sort of thing I should mention to you as well, be sure, if you would, we're going to defer all questions until all the speakers have completed their presentations. So just keep that in mind. We want to make sure that every speaker has equal time to speak and go through his or her remarks. So if you would, we'll have time at the very end for everyone to present questions of a general nature. And then at the very end, coinciding with the lunch, we'll have an opportunity for you to ask individual questions. So if you have questions that you would prefer to have answered in a one-on-one setting, I'm hoping that our speakers can stick around for a few minutes afterwards and assist you with those sorts of questions. But again, if you'll just defer all your questions until the last speaker's concluded, that'd be very helpful in making sure that everyone has equal time. Again, thank you very, very much for being here on such a pretty day, and I'll turn it over to Tanya at this point.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. And I work here locally with BB&T, and we were just, our wealth office was just currently relocated to the traffic circle. So we are on the second floor of the traffic circle building. And I have been with BB&T for 21 years. And most people say that I don't look like I have, but I have been there for 21 years. And trust officer with BB&T, and I do trust and estate work. But today I'm going to talk about charitable giving. Charitable giving can play an important role in many estate plans. Philanthropy can not only give you a great personal satisfaction, it can also give you a current income tax deduction, let you avoid capital gains tax, and reduce the amount of taxes your estate may owe when you die. There are many ways to give to a charity or church. You can make gifts during your lifetime or at your death. You can make gifts outright, or you can use a trust. You can name a charity or church as a beneficiary in your will, or you can designate a charity as a beneficiary of your retirement plan or a life insurance policy. One of the ways making outright gifts, an outright gift is one that benefits the charity immediately and exclusively. When I say charity, I also mean church in this regard. With an outright, with an outright gift, you can get immediate income and gift tax deduction. And we tell our clients, make sure the charity is a qualified charity according to the IRS. And also you can consult with the CPA, but what we normally do there is our IRS.gov website that you can reference and to make sure the charity is actually qualified if it's, other than a church. And we like to tell our clients to get a written receipt or keep a bank record for any cash donations and get a written receipt for any property other than money. Say, for example, if you give an asset, say a car or another type asset to a church or charity, make sure that you also get a receipt for that. The second way is with a will or trust bequest and beneficiary designations. I'm having trouble with my throat this morning. These gifts are made by including a provision in your will or a trust document, or by using a beneficiary designation form. The charity receives the gift at your death, at which time your estate can take income and estate tax deductions. And also, I'm sure you're very familiar with the designation forms, because with an IRA, you do a beneficiary designation form to establish your beneficiaries. That's what that means. And also, another way is through charitable trust. You can make charitable gifts to create a charitable trust. You can name the charity or church as the sole beneficiary, or you can use a non-charitable beneficiary as well, or even split the beneficial interest. The most common types of trust used to make partial gifts to a charity are the charitable lead trust and the charitable remainder trust. At first I'll talk about the charitable lead trust. The trust pays the income to a charity for a certain period of years, and then the trust principal passes back to you, your family members, or other heirs. The trust is known as a charitable lead trust because the charity gets the first or lead interest. It can be an excellent estate planning vehicle if you own assets that you expect will substantially appreciate in value. If created properly, a charitable lead trust allows you to keep the asset in the family but still enjoy tax benefits. The tax savings are generated because of the way the donation values are calculated and because those values become fixed when the trust is created and funded. And I have an illustration also on materials that I handed out that shows first to the charity, then to the trust. The income goes to the charity first, and then the balance goes to the family at the end of the trust period. There's two types of charitable lead trusts to fund those. Inter vivos is funded during the grantor's life, which is the grantor is also known as the donor, or a testamentary trust, which is funded through the grantor's will or the donor's will. The advantages here are this enables you to experience the impact of giving during your lifetime. It helps you substantially reduce the value of a taxable gift in that the gift is made for future interest. It also provides gift and estate tax sanctuary for assets expected to appreciate in value. It allows you to donate to a charity and keep the trust assets within the family. It allows you to postpone the non-charitable beneficiaries' receipt of the trust assets. It allows you to control the payment method, the terms of the trust, and the beneficiaries. And it also allows you to help minimize your taxable estate, thus potentially reducing federal estate tax liabilities. But there are a few disadvantages. No income tax deduction unless you are the owner of the charitable lead trust. It requires an irrevocable commitment, and also requires the charitable payment to be made each year regardless of whether there is sufficient trust income available. So if there's not trust income available, it comes from the principal. The second type is a charitable remainder trust, which we see more frequently used. This trust is a mirror image of the charitable lead trust. The income is payable to you, your family members, or other heirs for a period of years, and then the principal goes to the favorite charity or church. A charitable remainder trust can be beneficial because it provides you with a stream of current income, and this is a desirable feature if there won't be enough income from other sources. So basically, you get a percentage, and you can set that up monthly or quarterly or annually, but you get a payout each year, and then at the end of the trust, at your demise, then it goes to the charity or the church, the remaining principal. Again, the advantages with the charitable remainder is that you give to a charity, you reduce income for life or a term of years. You receive income for life or a term of years, and you receive immediate income tax deductions. You reduce or eliminate capital gains, gift, and estate taxes. You enjoy freedom from investment management decisions or duties. And the disadvantage is, again, that the transfers are irrevocable when you transfer to the trust, and the terms of the trust are unchangeable, though the assets and the beneficiaries may change. And these assets that pass to a charity, obviously, won't go to your heirs. So, in a lot of cases, our clients will put a portion of their assets, in this vehicle and they get an income stream, and then the balance goes to the charity. So, some feel like, this is a good vehicle to do for a portion of your assets. Congress has sweetened the pot for taxpayers who donate to qualified charities. First, you generally receive an income tax deduction in the year you make the gift. Second, you do not have to worry about gift tax because federal gift tax does not apply to charitable gifts. And third, charitable gifts serve to reduce your taxable estate, thus reducing your potential estate tax liability. Over the next 30 years, an estimated $8 trillion of assets will pass from one generation to the next, resulting in the assessment of significant estate taxes. And this is one solution to minimize the estate taxes is charitable giving.
Thank you very much. A lot of information there, as you might imagine. And again, I would encourage you to take advantage of the materials, which I think are going to be very helpful in enabling us to digest what we just learned. Okay, let's see, Gemma, I will turn it to you.
Yes, and I'm going to be complicated.
Okay.
Use the computer.
All right.
I am Jama Torah. If I look familiar to you, it's likely because I am blessed enough to be a member of our wonderful church here. But I also have the pleasure of working with St. Joseph of the Pines. Possibly many of you might be familiar with St. Joseph of the Pines in some fashion, and I will mention during my presentation today about the many different things that we have to offer. But the biggest thing I'm here to do is to tell you that you're not getting off as easy as just coming out to this presentation, unfortunately. In 15 minutes, I won't be able to give you all of the information that I would love to. And what I'm really here to talk to you today about is retirement communities. And you might tell me you moved to Pinehurst because it is a retirement community, but that's not exactly what I mean. I mean more specifically continuing care retirement communities. So I want you to think about beginning the next chapter in your life, and that's of course why you're here today. We've all been planners our whole life. You more than me, I'm still working on some of that, but you planned where you were going to go to college, you planned your careers, you planned your marriage and having kids. So why not now plan for the later chapters in your life and make sure that you're putting all those things in place just as you have your whole life. So why it's so important to research. You might be familiar, I work for Belmead and Pine Knoll at St. Joseph of the Pines, which are two continuing care retirement communities. The biggest difference when you're looking at retirement communities is to think about not only the all-inclusive services, but really putting a healthcare plan in place for the rest of your life. And that's why I encourage you to start doing your research into those. It's so important to really go out and visit different communities. In the current area, really the main CCRCs is what I'll call them going forward, just because continuing care retirement community is a mouthful. So CCRCs would be us at Belmead and Pine Knoll, and then Punic Village as well. But every single community you might visit, whether it's here locally or if you're deciding to move to be closer to your children, it's a little different. We have a saying that if you've seen one retirement community, you've only seen one retirement community. So you have to really put the time in to go in and visit and speak to the representatives there. We also tend to have some pre-existing perceptions of what retirement living is. I meet people all the time that say things like, why would I want to move to a continuing care retirement community? It's full of old people and I'm not old. Or they think that you have to wait until something's happened to make that move. But if you come out and visit with us, you would be surprised to know that that is not the case. Our residents are full of life and excitement and enjoy many, many different amenities, which I'll share some of those with you today. So why you should consider a CCRC, a lot of it has to do with lifestyle. In previous years, really the healthcare component seemed to be the #1 reason people would start researching CCRCs. But it has really changed to where lifestyle is one of the most important factors, because you don't want to just secure that plan for the rest of your life. You want to enjoy your life now, too. So that lifestyle is a big portion of it. Peace of mind, knowing that you've put a plan in place for the rest of your life. And that tends to not only give you peace of mind, but to give your children peace of mind, your family, those that care the most about you. and it is providing you a lifetime of protection at a predictable cost. You know, when you sit down, it's an investment that you're making in yourself so that you know if something unexpected should happen, which none of us have a crystal ball, only the Lord knows what's going to happen to us. It's nice to know that there's a plan in place for every single stage that might happen. Experts, there have been many studies that show that people who move to a continuing care retirement community at a younger age and really receive the full benefits that a retirement community has to offer, you live longer and you have a healthier lifestyle because you're promoting a dynamic lifestyle. Whether it's you're learning now, taking art classes and learning how to paint, or participating in one of the Bible studies, or maybe taking Tai Chi. That's a very popular thing at our communities. You really are promoting better health care, and with our dining room areas, you're making sure that you're getting good nutrition. You know, it's not a frozen dinner you're popping in the microwave every night, because that's what's most convenient. So what do CCRCs offer? Again, that's why you have to go and do your research, because everyone's a little bit different. But our communities, we have art studios and state-of-the-art fitness areas, an indoor swimming pool, movie theaters, different exercise classes. I mean, you name it, there's a lot going on. We also make sure that we have chapels in all the different areas of our continuum as well. And there's a comprehensive range of care and services. So with St. Joseph of the Pines, we have assisted living, skilled nursing, rehabilitation, memory care. So truthfully, whatever life throws your way, you know who's going to be caring for you. So some of the important questions as you're going out and doing your research that you want to think about, ask, what are the services and amenities that are included? Is the entrance fee refundable? And there are a lot of different options with that, and I'll tell you a little bit about ours in just a minute. What are the monthly fees that are associated? Is there a resident handbook that outlines policies that you could look at so that you really know, is this something that suits my needs? Is the CCRC accredited? And I can tell you that ours are accredited, and that just means that we've taken the time to have someone come out and survey us to make sure that we're following all the guidelines that make sure we're providing that outstanding level of service that we want to make sure that we are. So that's a great question to ask. And can I tour the higher levels of care? I understand that that is a scary thought when we think about that I might one day need that assisted living or that skilled nursing, but I promise you that if the day comes that you need it, it's going to be much less scary when you already know what it's like and you know who's going to be caring for you. And once you move in, you're going to be visiting friends who have progressed through our higher levels of care. So you get to know the nurses that will care for you, and it becomes a much less scary thing. So at St. Joseph of the Pines, we have Belmead and Pine Knoll. This is a picture of our Pine Knoll campus. Most people know it still as St. Joseph's Hospital, but you'd be surprised if you walk inside. It is not a hospital anymore. It's a beautiful retirement community. And Belmead is located just a mile down the road and is very much a golf resort style atmosphere. It's located on 100 gated acres, and we have a putting green and everything. So it's a nice area as well. But Belmead and Pine Knoll are two continuing care retirement communities. So by moving in, you're living independently just as you are in your own home now, but you're guaranteeing yourself access to our full continuum of care should you ever need it. Which would include our health center, which offers skilled nursing, short-term and long-term rehabilitation, as well as memory care. We have assisted living that is offered at the Coventry and in our family care homes. The Coventry is a larger facility, has a maximum of 50 people, but our family care homes are much smaller. It's a cottage that's been renovated to have 6 individual bedrooms, each with their own private bathroom. So it's assisted living, but on a much smaller scale. And we found that sometimes, depending on what someone's needs are, that's a better setting than having to walk a long way down the hall to get to the dining room. We also have outreach into the community, so we have Providence Place as well as our PACE program, which is really aimed towards helping those on the poverty line and ensuring that they have the level of care that they need as well. So our organization is not-for-profit, so that just means any profit that is made is reinvested back into the community in some fashion to several of these different areas. Our healthcare benefits at St. Joseph of the Pines, we offer two different entrance fee options. Fee-for-service or extensive benefit. You might go out and visit some communities that are equity-based, where you would actually own a portion of the property, but we are not that way. You're just basically buying yourself a contract. The fee-for-service contract would be, you pay less money to move in, but if you should ever need a higher level of care, you're going to pay the full published monthly rate for that care. Although you're guaranteed it, but you're going to pay a little bit more if the time comes you do. We also have extensive benefit, which means you pay more money up front, but you're guaranteeing yourself a healthcare discount should you ever need that level of care. Now, some people have long-term care insurance already. Does anybody here have long-term care insurance already? A couple of you, okay? So you've already started putting that plan in place. So extensive benefit may not be as appealing to you, but for those that are really concerned about, those costs can add up. I can give you in round numbers, our assisted living is about $5,300 a month, and skilled nursing is about $7,000 a month. So if you're there for a long period of time, that could drain your assets. So it's something to come and sit down and talk to myself or one of my coworkers, and we can really talk about what would best suit your financial needs. We also offer temporary stays in our health center. So part of what you're buying is 30 cumulative days per year for stays in the healthcare portions without any additional cost. So if something should come up, if you came down with pneumonia and you just need somewhere to be cared for while you're recovering, our goal is to get you back on your feet as quickly as possible so you can get back to all the things you enjoy doing. And then, as I mentioned, we have assisted living and skilled nursing services as well. What if the CCRC is not right for you? And it may not be. It's not for everyone. You might come out and really do your research and decide, I just don't plan to leave my home. So some of the questions that I would urge you to ask yourselves and find answers to now then would be, what's going to happen to me if I get sick? Who's going to care for you? Do you have that plan already in place? Do you have long-term care insurance? And if you do, is it enough to cover those costs? So most people tend to really sit down and not just coming out and talking to me, but talking to your financial advisor and an attorney and really putting that plan in place. It's an important thing to do. So your next steps, I would say, do your research. So like I said, you're not getting away with just coming out today. You're going to have to spend a little more time than that. And I know your time is valuable. I joke with my in-laws, Ann and Lou Torov, if you happen to know them, that they're more busy than I am in retirement. So I'm sure you all are the same way, but you have to put that time aside to do this. Find a CCRC that best fits your needs. Of course, here at St. Joseph of the Pines, we hope that's Belmead and Pine Knoll, but if it's not, I'm happy to help you find the right one that is and point you in the right direction. Or if that's not right for you, go ahead and put that healthcare plan in place. And enjoy beginning a new chapter of your life with the confidence that you've planned ahead. And really, when you can alleviate all those worries that are in the back of our mind about things that come with aging, you can really take that time and enjoy it. So that's my homework for you, is to do your research.
Thank you very much. One thing that I should point out that I didn't before now is that what you're seeing here today is also going to be made available on the Village Chapel website. So you'll see that this is being recorded. So hello out there in TV land. And it'll be available on the website, like I say, afterwards. So if you want to revisit any of this, you'll have the opportunity to do it. And particularly some of the remarks that you might want to digest a little bit further, again, you can re-review at that time. Okay, I'll turn it to Robin Patterson at this point, and I'll apologize for having Meg Craven in here, but after all, you only gave me 4 weeks' notice that you. So apparently that wasn't enough time for me to react. So I apologize for that.
I'm Robin Patterson, and I'm one of the social workers with First Help Hospice and Palliative Care in our community. I'm here to talk about healthcare decisions and some of the documents to help in making those decisions. And I've got a little video clip I want to show that kind of brings to light why you need to have these documents. that we use each year to promote healthcare decisions. It's called National Healthcare Decisions Day. It happens in April, usually around April 16th. If it's on a Saturday or Sunday, it's probably going to be a different day. But it gives the opportunity to give folks a chance to complete some advanced directives if they want to. We sponsor it at First Health Hospice and Palliative Care on our campus. You can come and complete healthcare power of attorney and a living will. We have notaries present, if you want to do that. It's a national campaign. So that's where this came from. But I really like to use this because I think it kind of brings up the importance of having those documents and having made some of those decisions and having them in writing. One of the things that I always like to say is these documents start with conversations, discussions about what you want about your health, what you want your family to know about your decisions. As a social worker, I work with families from all walks of life, and it's interesting that some people are very much prepared, and then some people haven't had conversations or not made those. I think anytime you go in the hospital these days, somebody's probably asking you about, whether you have a healthcare power of attorney, whether you have a living will, maybe do you have a do not resuscitate order. That's just part of healthcare these days because health practices now want to know what we want to know what you want as a patient about your health. We are involved more today than ever in what we want about our health and how we want to live our lives. Like she was saying, we have lots of choices about things we can do and activities. We have a lot of control, and the same goes with our health. So the documents that are mentioned here are a living will and a healthcare power of attorney. Those are documents that you can have completed in front of two witnesses, non-family, and have them notarized. They're on the North Carolina website. You can pull those off. I'd like to suggest when folks are doing some of their estate planning, a lot of times those are part of that. Those documents are done with your attorney. And that's always good. I think they're very clear when you have that opportunity. The healthcare power of attorney, I think, is real important because it lists who you would want to make decisions for you, and it gives you some choices with maybe a spouse and then maybe a child. Who's next in place? Kind of a 1, 2, 3 of importance, especially if someone's not available. North Carolina does have specific documents that are a healthcare power of attorney and a living will that are particular to our state. There are people that move into the area, and like Buck mentioned, you may want to have those reviewed as to whether they cover all the areas that North Carolina does. One of the acronyms that I like to have is called LIVE, and it talks about learn about options for end-of-life services and care. I, implement plans to ensure wishes are honored. V, voice decisions to family, friends, and healthcare providers. E, engage in personal or community efforts to improve end-of-life care. When you're making those decisions about who you want to make decisions for you, certainly you want your spouse to know, but I think it's always important to involve all of your family so everybody's on the same page of knowing what you want. Having those conversations early on about what you want, what you would expect, what kind of treatments, before maybe you have an illness, what kind of treatments, what kind of wishes you have. Make sure everybody knows. Because we all know in families we have children, sometimes we have stepchildren that are, and everybody has an opinion. We all live independently, we're all we all have different information, so it's important for everybody to know what your particular decisions, and there are no questions when those times come up when decisions have to be made and you're not able to make them. A healthcare power of attorney is a document that can be in place, and it's accessed really only when you're not able to make decisions. As long as you are the go-to to say, yes, I want this treatment, no, I don't want this, then you're going to be the decision maker. When you're not able to be that decision maker, you want to make sure you have somebody who knows you and wants to make the decisions you want. A living will is a document that talks about different options that you would have for care. Like, do you want to be put on a ventilator? Do you want to have a feeding tube inserted? Things like that. Do you want? Those kinds of things are written in that document. A couple of other advanced directives would be a DNR. DNR looks like this. It's a bright orange form, and it's really a document that states that you do not want CPR. This is an emergency document. If, say you were at home, you had a living will, you've a healthcare power of attorney, all these things are in place, you know what you want, and 911 was called. Okay, 911 is going to come to your house, and they're going to do what 911 does. They're going to do emergency work. They're going to do everything in their power to bring you the care you need, get you to the hospital. All those emergency things are going to happen. A DNR is in place for those emergencies to say that you do not want any advanced life support. You do not want CPR. So this is a document that is more of an emergency form. Your physician can talk to you about this. It's not a form that I would give out and say, take home and look at. And it's an emergency form. Your doctor's going to have it. The hospital's going to have it. Anytime you travel back and forth to the hospital, it's a document that goes with you. It doesn't stay at home. It doesn't. It goes with you back and forth. Another emergency form that your physician may talk to you about is called a MOST. This is a bright pink form that is another medical order. This is medical order for treatment form, but it's more specific. So if there's some specific things that you want tried, this spells a lot of that out in more detail. Again, these are forms that are not going to be available just to pick up and take around. They're medical orders. They have to be signed by a physician. As a social worker, I help people get these documents if they want. They're documents that really just have to be signed by the physician. They're not signed by you and then the physician, except for the MOST. The MOST does have your signature or your healthcare power of attorney or an important person that's making those decisions. But those are two more emergency forms that you could have. Anytime you make these documents or have these documents, it's important that you know where they're at. It's good to keep them with important papers. It's good to give a copy to the hospital, to have in their charts. They're easy to pull up. Your physician has them. Your physician knows what you want. So it's important to know where those documents are kept. So give a copy to those providers. They can copy it and put it in the record. It's really easy now when you have those documents made to have a few copies made to give out. But make sure you have the original. That's a lot of information about very important decisions. And I think, again, I just want to reiterate that your help and your involvement in making those decisions is critical. And having those conversations, it's not one conversation and then everything's settled. It's having lots of conversations. I've had friends that have had a Thanksgiving dinner with their family, and Mom and Dad wanted to talk about healthcare power of attorney on being will, and they were like, no, we're not going to do that. And and I told my friend, I said, this is what's important to them. This is what they want to talk about. This is an opportunity. It's not scary, but that was an initial reaction. So sometimes it takes a few conversations, and sometimes our children don't want to know about what you're doing with your planning. But when push comes to shove in those times where they need it, they're going to be so grateful that those decisions have been made and they know what you want. That's all the more reason they can honor your decisions. So anyway, that's a lot of what I wanted to say, mainly about the healthcare documents that are very important.
Thank you very much, Robin. One thing I just wanted to mention along those lines is, again, actually two things. Number one, as I mentioned at the very beginning, one of the brochures that Mike was kind enough to provide specifically addresses living wills and healthcare powers of attorney. So I know I've repeated this 2 or 3 times at this point, but again, they are available on that table if you'd like to have them. Another thing I would mention to you, along the lines of those documents that Robin mentioned and that I mentioned on Mike's behalf at the outset, is that 2 things. Number one, it is, people look at it the wrong way, and I see people, when they bring it to my attention, they almost sort of shudder. And they say, they just sense that there's some sort of finality when they start talking about things like that. And really, what I try to impress on people, at least I did when I was doing more of that area of work, is that it's really not that, I don't think that's really a good way to look at it. I think a better way to look at it is just one of the things that you plan. It's just anything that you plan. It's just like financial planning. It's just one of or making a budget. It's just one of the things that you do. So it's not that you're deciding that it's the end or anything like that. Again, it's not the way to look at it in my view whatsoever. The second thing I would point out is that these documents are not in and of themselves final. You do, of course, have the right to revisit any document you want at any time. As I mentioned at the outset, when you have the right to review your existing estate documents. But again, the documents that Robin mentioned, same thing. You've got the right, and I would encourage you, if circumstances change, and if your relationship with people change, or if the status of the people change, for example, their capacity to act on your behalf, again, those can be revisited at any time. So it's not a one-time, this is it, nothing, it can't be revisited. That's just simply not true. You can at any point. Okay, having said that, I'll turn it over to Mike, and he will take it from here on behalf of Gold Steel.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I've got one of those topics that nobody ever wants to talk about. It's not a very good dinner conversation to bring up. And like Robin said, it's one of those things that's very important that you sit down and talk with someone prior to this decision being made. One of the hardest parts of my job is when someone passes and family comes in to plan for that person, and they don't have a clue what that person wanted. Burial, cremation, services, if they want to be buried somewhere, they don't know. And it puts a big burden on families when they come in, when they don't have an idea of what that person wanted. So it's more of just expressing what you want in advance, or telling someone in advance. And that can be done several different ways. That can be done through your church, planning with them and letting them know what you want. That can be done with other family members, sitting down and making them aware of what you want. Or you can come in to a funeral home and sit down with the funeral director and plan that out. And that can even be done in several ways. It can be done just by giving information, or it can be done by prepaying, pre-planning, and basically getting it out of the way before that time comes. A lot of folks don't realize that there's a lot legality, a lot of legal things that happen when a person passes away. There are a lot of things that are needed. And funeral homes assist you with a lot of those things when that time comes. One of the big things are death certificates. There's a lot of personal information that goes on death certificates that funeral homes will assist you. And the information is better given by the person themselves than having to be figured out and given by family members or someone else. And so when you come in and you give us that information we know is correct because it's actually given by you. And it's very valuable because when a person passes away, the best way to look at it, the death certificate then becomes their signature. So anything that you obtain during your lifetime, such as vehicles or any property, stocks, bonds, IRAs, bank accounts, utilities, power bills, water bills, these are all things that your name eventually will have to be taken off of to either be transferred into someone else's name, to be sold, to be turned off, things like that. So it's very important that family members have good, correct information, or you come in and give good, correct information because those documents are very important. There are other legal aspects to pre-planning, such as cremation and burial and things like that. A lot of people don't realize that in the state of North Carolina, if you want to cremate someone, there are several different things that are required, and one of the biggest things is you have to have the signature of the legal authorizing representative. Okay? What that means is a person can come in and sign for themselves to be cremated, but after they pass away, they have to have the legal authorization of their next of kin. Now, generally, that is a spouse, and a spouse is considered the next of kin. But let's just say you're widowed, you want to be cremated, and your next of kin maybe is children. Well, let's say you have 5 or 6 children. All 5 or 6 children have to sign in order to have you cremated because they are all of equal relation. Okay? So it doesn't matter who's the oldest, it doesn't matter who's the youngest, it doesn't matter who's there at the time to make arrangements. All 5 would have to sign. Okay? So if you have 3 of them that don't want mama to be cremated and 2 of them do, you've got a problem. So that's why I'm saying exactly what Robin said. It's best for you to have this figured out in advance and for you to have all these things documented in advance. Even if you do nothing else than come into a funeral home and sign your own cremation authorization, you've done something that you don't even have to have that conversation with family. You can tell them, I've gone to the funeral home, I've done this, that's it. You've eased the burden of them trying to figure out what you want. That's one of the main things. Now, there's a lot of other things that you can do in advance. You can write your own obituary. You can plan your own service. You can maybe write down what you want said at your service about you. You can pick your own flowers out. You can do everything, and it's just the way you want it. And there's no better feeling that I have that when a family walks in, I can look at them and I can say, this is how your mother and father wanted it. They did it all themselves. And you can see the relief actually leave their face when they come in because they don't have to worry about making decisions. So it is a lot easier when you actually plan it and do it the way that you want it in advance. Now, a lot of people will come in and want to prepay for their own funerals or their own cremation or whatever they want in advance. And that is good because let's just say you walked in today and paid for your cremation, okay? You paid for it at today's cost. Well, let's say you live 20 years. It does not matter. It's paid for at today's cost. The pre-needs that we do are inflation-proof pre-needs, which means that no matter how long you live, it does not matter. The cost, even though it is going to rise, it does not matter. You're locked in at today's cost. We also make our policies irrevocable. Okay, which means that a family member, let's just say that you give them power of attorney or you make somebody responsible for you, if you need that, they cannot take this money from you. In other words, it is invested for your cremation or your burial, and it is your money for that purpose. Now, the only thing the funeral home is we're the beneficiary of that policy, which means that if you move or you decide that you want to use another funeral home, you just basically change the beneficiary. Again, it is always your money. So when you invest in your funeral, it is, again, your money for that purpose that no one can take from you, to be used for that reason. So there are a lot of good things to it. I always say there's one bad thing to a pre-need is you got to die in order to use it. So there are a lot of good aspects to it. But you can do as much as you want, and I always say that even if you do no more than come into the funeral home and just sit down with us, and it doesn't cost you a dime, just jot down what you want. Bring it in, let us put it in a file, and have it there ready for when that time comes. So that if family members question, you've got those answers, you've got it exactly the way that you want it. And that's the most important thing.
Mike, thank you very much. One thing I'll mention along the lines of arrangements, again, going back to the healthcare power of attorney, the North Carolina statutory healthcare power of attorney does in fact include provisions along those lines. So that's, again, another benefit of using that document. So not only can you state, for example, in that document, it is my desire to be cremated, or it is my desire to be blank. Another thing, incidentally, in that form is that it does give you the specific right and the ability to become an organ donor if you choose to do so. Obviously, you don't have to, but you can, and it gives you that ability. And that's something else that your beneficiaries would not have to worry about or think about or wonder about. Similarly, and people feel very different, there are very broad ranges of opinion about this, but some people are pleased to have their bodies donated or for anatomical research. Again, that the healthcare power of attorney includes something like that if you were so inclined. So I will turn it to John at this point.
First, I want to thank all of you for being here today to consider a range of subjects that so many of us would rather put off until later. Estate planning may not be the most humorous of subjects, but I'm reminded of the last will and testament of the great German poet Heinrich Heine, who said that he was going to leave his entire estate to his wife, only on the condition that she remarried. He said, I want at least one person to be sorry that I'm dead. True story. I'm here to talk about what you can do to plan your funeral service in the church. We have these forms, and we have plenty of them over here on this table, that would not take that long to fill out. And something that you can do with your spouse and your loved ones to decide what you want your funeral service to look like. There are many ways to show your survivors how much you love them, and this is one of them. In this form, you can talk about, you can decide where you want the service to be. And you might think, well, of course, I want it in the church. But what if, for the last 10 years, you've been living out at Belmead or Pine Knoll? And there are a lot of people out there who've been assisting you during that time. You might want your service out there. And the village chapel has held services at Belmead on behalf of people who have been there for quite a long time. You might you want to decide who might officiate your service. We have 2 different pastors here. If you have any military, fraternal, or social organizations that might want to be a part of your service, you can already decide that. How about if you were a veteran? Will there be a military aspect to your service? A veteran's flag, for example. Do you want your photo on the cover of the bulletin for the service. That's something that I would say in the last 10 years people have started doing. But some people don't want that. And then we would have a picture of the village chapel on the bulletin. What was Dad's or Mom's favorite song? Or is there a religious poem that they might want to be a part of the service? Do you want your obituary in the bulletin as well? Many people want that today. That's something that you can decide, and then you save your loved ones from having to guess at what you would have wanted. Eulogy speakers. Some people don't want eulogies at all. They simply want the pastor to talk about our hope of a resurrection and our reunion with each other in heaven. But you might want a few family members or a friend to say something on your behalf. That's something that you can decide now. Music. And I can tell you there have been many times in my conferences with survivors where they've debated and even argued over what was Dad's favorite hymn. You can decide what hymns you want at your service. And again, save your family any potential conflict in debating over what it would be. Holy Communion. Those people who come from a liturgical or Roman Catholic, Anglican background, they might want Holy Communion at their service. And that's something, again, that you can decide. The readings from the Scripture. What was Dad's favorite Gospel or Old Testament reading? Again, you don't want your family members arguing over that sort of thing. Go ahead and pick them out now. And if you need any kind of assistance or consultation on that, the clergy are here for you to help you with this. Flowers and memorial donations. These are things that you can already take care of now while you're alive. And then finally, as the representative from Bowles mentioned, whether you want to be cremated or a casket funeral, that's something that you can decide and not leave your loved ones to have to guess about. These are forms that we have here. You can fill them out in consultation with your family or with the clergy, and then they're on file here for the sake of your loved ones.
Thank you, Pastor John. With that, is Jim Wilford here? There he is.
I'm Jim Wilford. I'm at Pineland Cemetery. We're located right behind the Fresh Market Shopping Center. A lot of people pass our entrance many times in the course of the year, and they don't know what we do back there.
Jim, you want to talk into the mic?
Oh, okay. Thanks to this. Okay, so we have a lot of visitors come in and look around to see what we do there. And I've seen Mike many times in the past many years with interments at a frequent basis. And what we are striving for is to honor our loved ones. And we believe the value of memorialization, very much so. Now, we know we've heard stories that we enjoy having Mother and Dad's urn sitting on the mantle, and we would go by and say hello to them, and that's fine and good. We understand that. But in the years to come, you need to have a final resting place for ashes of that nature and for the eternity. So we believe in having a small bronze plaque with their name and phrases and dates on there for the legacy of the family. Now, we have above ground burial and mausoleum crypts and niches on the wall. We have traditional burial in the gardens, and we also have cremation gardens. We have a high percentage of people now in the cremation interment arena, at about 65%. And we have various types of venues for that. So you'd have to come out for us to give you a viewing of that. And we have a lot of veterans. And we have, and one good thing about the government, the spouse will get a free bronze plate from the government. And we place it in an appropriate location. I was in Arlington Cemetery just 2 weeks ago, and I was very impressed. I've been there 40 years. And they have over 600 acres there. And I've noticed they have clusters of wall niches and little units. I was in unit number 9, and they have hundreds and hundreds of them there. It's very impressive. And everyone's name and rank and so forth was there. But the main thing is they're going to be memorialized forever. So we really think that is an important assessment to make for the family. So we have to abide by all the rules and regulations of the Cemetery Commission, and we have to have certificates signed, to get certificates in our files for everyone. And so it's very straightforward, but it's an honor to serve the families of Moore County. We have Henry Duncan, the former senior minister here at the chapel, out there with us. And I just wanted to say one thing is that it's not a bad omen to purchase property ahead of time, because some people say, well, if I buy it now, I might need to use it soon. Please don't say that's the case. We had a family yesterday that came in, and they're finally going to use their one of their spaces in the crypt 34 years. They bought it 34 years ago, so they didn't have to use it that fast. So then, just as Mike said, you get today's pricing, and it's capped, and 20, 30 years from now, you won't have to pay anymore. It's done and over. So there's value to planning ahead, and we welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will finalize things by just reminding everyone of the Village Chapel, the foundation that we have here. And each of you should have in front of you just a one-page document that discusses the planned gift giving options that are available to you. So I sure hope you'll take an opportunity to read through that and keep the chapel, the foundation, in mind when you undertake your estate planning. A couple of things that are pretty easy. One, Pastor John mentioned yesterday when he and I were speaking, simply a residuary clause in your will, just basically saying that anything that's not disposed of you're in, anything that's not otherwise disposed of would go to the chapel. So again, just sort of a catch-all phrase, simple to add to an existing will. Another thing I would mention, again, regarding the foundation, it's our effort and our goal to make it as broad as possible to give you as many options as are out there. So you'll see that there are several on here which coincide with some of the topics that you've heard here today, and which coincide also, again, with some of the things that you'll see in the North Carolina Bar Association brochures that I mentioned. If you do, we would sure appreciate your making some sort of a gift that would be less restrictive rather than more restrictive in its use by the foundation. What we run into with the foundation from time to time is a situation where a gift is in the foundation, but its uses are somewhat restricted, and therefore we're not able to open it up for other purposes. Just if you'll be mindful of that, we would greatly appreciate it, because none of us want to unnecessarily restrict future generations or create any unintended consequences. So again, I sure don't want to sit here and dictate what your gift should be, but I just do want to mention that to you because it would be very helpful to us. That's really about it. First of all, I sure hope that you'll join me in applauding the speakers who took time from their Saturday morning and came up and spoke with us today. Thank you very much. Obviously, there's no such thing as a one-person committee. At least I don't think there is. I've never been on one. And I've gotten a lot of help from the other members of the committee. Carolyn Smith was very helpful in moving this along and providing the lunch that we're about to have. Also, the other committee members, again, all very helpful in extending their thoughts, their comments, their suggestions. Rob Barrett, Kay Goodlay, Melinda Summey, Paul Dillon, John Jacobs, of course, Peter Rose, my mentor, George Trail, Jimmy Schneider, and Oxdale Bueno, Candace Peoples. All of them have been very helpful in assisting us with the Foundation Committee activities. And of course, I could not stop without thanking my beautiful wife, Sally, who was kind enough to ask me for about a month whether I needed any assistance, and I kept saying no. And then about 10 minutes before I walked out the door today, I said, "Oh, by the way, can you do this for me?" And she did it cheerfully and gracefully, so thank you, thank you, thank you. That is really it. We are way early, but we've got lots of time for questions. So if you've got any questions of a general nature that you're comfortable presenting in this format, we're welcome to take them at this time.
Yeah, I have a question. I was with a group, and they said if you wanted to be buried out of state, you had to be cremated before your body could be taken out of state. And I didn't understand what about cremation and how much does it cost and how do you do about that?
No, ma'am, you do not have to be cremated before you're taken out of state. You can be buried anywhere that you want. The only thing that is required for you to be buried in another state is what's called a burial transit permit. And it is issued by the funeral home and signed off by the Register of Deeds in order for that to happen. What we generally do is we make arrangements with a receiving funeral home in another state or in another country, depending upon where you want to be buried at. And then we're able to, of course, send you by airline to another state. That is generally the least expensive way to transport a person for burial in another state is by airline. Now, as far as cremated, if you want to be transported cremated, that is completely up to you, family member. Cremated remains can be transported with no issues at all. The only complications that you may run into with transporting cremated remains is getting them on an airplane. When a person takes them on an airplane, generally they need the correct documentation, and that person needs to be in a container that can be x-rayed by security on an airline. And so that you have to thank 9/11 because of that. The regulations are very strict for the FAA to be able to do that.
And how much does it cost to be transported out of state?
Generally, if you just need a local funeral home here, you're not having any services or anything like that, and you want to be transported to another funeral home, it's usually less than $2,000 to do that. And that includes airline tickets and everything.
Wow. On a permanent basis. I'd like to get your cremated. How much of you goes into the urn?
100%.
So there's no...
We don't want to keep you.
Okay, so there's no longer hip joints or whatever that don't...
No, ma'am. And that's a good question because a lot of people ask, well, what happens to things that are placed in us, during a lifetime? In other words, pacemakers, defibrillators, hip joints, fillings, things like that. We recycle everything. Okay, so if you have hip joints and things like that in there, they generally will stay in until after the cremation is completed. And then after the cremation's done, we recycle those items. They're made out of titanium. We give them to a company who comes in, they pick those items up, and then they will in return, they will melt those items down and remake other joints and things like that out of titanium. The only thing for cremation purposes that we remove are pacemakers and defibrillators because they are made out of lithium. Lithium is very dangerous and it is highly explosive. Now, unfortunately, we cannot donate pacemakers and defibrillators to people who can't afford them. They will not allow us to place them in anyone else or give them so that they can be placed in anyone else. So what we do is we donate those to the veterinary hospital in Raleigh, and they put them in animals. And so I can't tell you how many animals that it has managed to save because of the donation of pacemakers and defibrillators. Generally, most things will stay in except for those items. Yes.
Oh, another?
Is there a biblical reference about cremation?
Well, some people ask about what is a Christian burial, and I think traditionally that was thought to be by way of casket. I don't think there's any worry about whether a Christian burial is by way of casket or cremation. And I'm not aware of anything in the Bible that would say otherwise.
I've been asked the same question many times, and I've always said that if Jesus was good enough to turn the water into wine, he can transform you back into whatever he wants to.
I had a question on the DNR and the other form. You said the pink one was called MOST. Is that MOST?
Yes.
And is that like saying just certain things they would do to you to revive you, not the whole 9 yards?
It's certain kind of stopgaps, and it talks about medical interventions, and it has attempt CPR, different limitations that you want. It has antibiotics or medically administered fluids and nutrition. It's just very specific.
Is that more like yes then, and the DNR is more like no?
The DNR is you do not want CPR. So you do not want any CPR if you were to stop breathing on your own.
And where do you get those original forms? You said you can make copies, but since they're pink and orange.
Yeah, no, I really can't make copies. That's what I said. They're really available, not really to the public. Their physicians' offices will have them, definitely the hospital. The most, because it involves more of a discussion in more detail, it's a form that probably should be discussed with your physician to in detail, and then it is signed by you and the physician.
And so your health provider, whoever
The
that
health
would be, would keep
provider or
it
the
in
hospital,
their files.
it definitely, I mean, we have them with hospice patients because we can get them signed by the physician and then have them available for patients if they want. You can look at the MOST form and kind of look at it if you want. It's just, because it is a medical order, it is, that's why they're not just handed out.
Right. Thank you.
Another question. When we moved to North Carolina, we have the living will, the marriage attorney, we have the DNR, we have the MOST form, we have them all done. So when my husband just had shoulder surgery, it was like a wake-up call to see DNR in bright orange letters on his folder going with him to the OR. So my question is, and I guess this is more of a legal question, he's had numerous health issues. So suppose he's home and he collapses, and I call 911, which I would certainly do, and then they come, and then I know there's a DNR form on file at the hospital and in our living will, then what? I mean, I would think they would have to respond, but I can't not call them because this is a document we have.
No, you would call 911 because of what's going on. The DNR should not be at the hospital. It should be with you. The MOST should be with you. It's not made to be in the hospital.
It's part of the attorney sent a package to First Health, but we also have some of the same thing.
Right. Still, it shouldn't be, it's no good unless it's with the patient. So it is an emergency form. If 911 were called and that form was at the hospital and a patient does not want CPR, EMS is going to do CPR anyway because they don't know. They don't have a form, to know what the patient's wishes are. They would automatically attend to that. That's why both of those forms need to be with a patient. They don't need to be in the hospital. They kind of go back and forth. If you go to the hospital, EMS wants to take them to the hospital. They just go back and forth with you. The same if you're in a skilled nursing facility and you have a DNR in your record. That facility has that DNR and they send that with you to the hospital, back and forth. Does that make sense?
I'd like to expand her question just a little bit about the DNR. Does it have an expiration date on it, so to speak? For example, I think the example you gave was your husband was going into surgery at a DNR farm. He obviously survived that successfully, was discharged. Now, the record that he executed one of those is somewhere on record in the hospital. Let's suppose he goes in next week with he's cut himself, he has to go to the emergency room or whatever. Is that form, while it's unlikely they would do resuscitation, is that form still valid, or did it expire when he was discharged from the hospital? In other words, once it's submitted, is it there in perpetuity, or is it there only for that incident?
Well, on the form, there's an effective date,
Okay.
and then there's an expiration
All
date.
right, that answers the
If
question.
any. You can also check that there's no expiration date. Now, on those, it's good for a year. It does have to be reevaluated and renewed. So the date that's on the most, needs to be checked and
Okay, well, I think that's an important piece of information to give out when you're describing the form. Thank you.
I think what he was describing was something completely different other than a living will. When you sit down with your attorney, you do a living will and you stipulate what is to be done and what is not to be done. We were given a little package, which is on our refrigerator, so that in case something should happen, they know where to look. They'll go and pull that off the refrigerator and see that he has a no resuscitation. There's no limit on that. That's till eternity. This is what we both decided we wanted to do. And so it's there, it's in our glove compartment of our car. So it's something that's completely different. It's part of our living will.
Lucky, you may have already alluded to this, but how important is it for someone from out of state coming here to retire to have their existing will evaluated by an attorney here?
Thank you. It is very important. Again, the probating requirements vary from state to state, and anyone who has recently relocated to North Carolina, I would urge to consult with an attorney to have that will evaluated, because again, in North Carolina, if North Carolina's probating requirements vary from the state in which you were previously domiciled, you might be deemed to have died without a will if that will is attempted to be probated in North Carolina after your death. And again, going back to my colleague, Mike Gorenflow, who unfortunately could not be here today, he'll be glad to meet with any of you in our Pinehurst office. Going back to the healthcare powers of attorney and the living wills, I think, and this is more Mike's area and probably maybe yours than mine, so y'all can jump in here if you like. But I think now that you can also actually register those. I think there's a website that you can go to once you complete one, and you can actually have that set out so that at that point you no longer have to be aware of the physical custody. I think you can actually go online, register it somewhere, and then it's available to your healthcare providers thereafter. I'm almost positive that's correct. And of course, having thrilled you with that information, I don't know the name of the website, but I can provide it for you. My contact information, incidentally, is at the bottom of the page regarding the planned giving. So if you take a look at that, all the way down at the bottom, I've given you both my telephone number and my email address. So if you have any follow-up questions for me, incidentally, regarding today's presentation, or anything of a more general nature regarding the plan, the giving, I'm glad to address those. Again, you've got my telephone number at my office. You've got my email address as well. I am a real estate attorney. I do transactional residential work. I'm on the phone all day long, so I'm not the easiest person to try to get to on the telephone. Email is probably a better way to do it. I will return your call, don't get me wrong, but it could be it could be that you might not get a call back that day. It could be the following day, and I'll apologize in advance for that. Any other questions from anyone, generally speaking? Okay. Well, we've got, at least I think we do, a luncheon planned, and again, we've got, if you do have questions of a more personal nature or more individual nature, again, you're welcome to consult with any of our speakers on a one-on-one basis. I'm sorry, Carol.
But just for everybody, we will be served a box lunch today. They should be here at 11:30. So feel free, if you'd just like to take it home with you, if you would rather not stay, but we'd love you to stay too. So anyway, they'll be here momentarily.
All right. Okay, well, there you are. So we have options for you. Yes, sir. Mr. Newton.
Well, since I don't have a mic, before we close, I know we have some people who deposit, I think the term is cremains here at the village chapel and the memorial garden and so forth. Could someone describe the process, the procedure, how that's done, what's done, what the rules and regulations are, memorials, so forth? That wasn't on the program, and I think people would be interested in knowing more about that, and it might be something the foundation would want to look into as well.
Thank you.
If you want a memorial plaque, and by the way, they used to be right in here in this alcove, they'll be back. We're having some artistic painting that's going to be going on in here to make it a bit more beautiful. And those plaques will go back on the wall if you want a memorial plaque to commemorate your loved one's remains here in the Tufts Memorial Garden. You can talk to Candace in the office about that. But as far as that part of the service where the cremated remains are put in the garden, that's called the committal. And it's usually right after the main part of the funeral service. And ordinarily it's the immediate family, but it doesn't have to be limited just to that. And we come out here to the memorial garden, and it's about a 5 to 10 minute service, primarily prayers. It's sort of the last farewell to the loved one before we're reunited in heaven. And then the family can spread the remains in the plants and shrubs in the garden. And that's the way we do it. In some churches, they actually bury the remains in the ground. We don't do that here. But that's something that other people do. And in some places they have what's called a columbarium, which is a wall where there are niches in the wall and you can put the cremated remains there. We don't do that either here. We simply spread them in the flowers and the shrubs in the memorial garden. But it's the final part of the service. Yes?
Anybody who is a member of the church and chooses to, or asks to have their remains spread there, then that's their decision and the church's decision.
Yes. Yes. Any member of the church who would like to have this done, simply call the church office and you can consult with me and we can talk about it. And it's just one other thing that we can do to plan ahead. And also, I might add, while we're on the subject, there are many people who have pets that have become members of the family, essentially. And I've done, a kind of memorial service for pets as well. And for some people, that's very important in order to say goodbye. And I don't have a problem with doing that. I don't think there's anything unchristian about that sort of thing. And so if any of you have a pet that has died and you would like to say farewell in a ritualistic way, we can do that here too.
I just wanted to add a very small thing. After my husband died 5.5 years ago, it was just too much planning on the canal and everything. So probably 6 months later, Ashley did this, and we met in the courtyard out here, the Memorial Garden, and the granddaughters were here, and Sally, one of the girls, read a poem she had written. It was very, very nice. We even brought the dog. It was a sunny day. It was private. I loved it. If anybody thinks about that,
Yes, Don.
My question is can the ashes be split between two locations? For example, if I had a choice, I'd want half of my ashes here and the other half at Arlington Cemetery.
That's a good question, and because we live in a society now where people are so spread out, and many of us have places that are dear to us that we might call our homes. The beauty of being cremated is that you can have multiple services, and which you can't do with a casket. And so that's what many people are doing now, because they want to be buried here, but then also perhaps up north or some other place. And also, if you have family that's spread out, and maybe part of your family can't come to this service here, but you can have another service someplace else and divide up the remains.
You can divide them as many ways as you want, but I heard you mention Arlington. Arlington is very specific as a cemetery that when a person is placed in Arlington, they want 100% of the cremated remains to be placed there. So you do, if you wanted to split them, that's fine, but you cannot be placed in Arlington if you're going to do that. They will want 100% of the person, and they're entitled to it.
With hospice, the cost, is that covered by Medicare and your supplemental insurance, and for how long?
Yes, hospice is covered 100% by Medicare. There's a hospice benefit, should be elected. It never goes away. It's managed. It's managed by review over periods of time, generally every 90 days, and then 60-day benefit periods, where there's evaluation between the hospice team, which is a physician, a nurse, social worker, to see whether a patient is still appropriate for hospice. If they're discharged, you can come back at any time. It's just managed. So it never goes away. But it is covered 100% under Medicare, under Medicaid, and most private insurances fall under Medicare.
I'd like to compliment the church for this program and for those of you who put it together. We just finished extensive work with our lawyer to update our documents on the current laws. But I still learned a lot this morning, so thank you.
Just one more thing I'll say is, again, my contact information is at the bottom of the page regarding the plan giving. If you've got, we are pleased to, and first of all, I appreciate the remark. We are pleased to offer this sort of program again, and maybe in a different spin on it, or the same program. I welcome your comments. I welcome your suggestions. I welcome your criticisms. Anything that you'd like to offer regarding how to make this program better, or other suggestions that you might have for different programs in related areas. Again, my email address is here. I'm glad to receive anything that you might want to offer.